Well, here we are.
Hello. Welcome back, everybody.
You made me nervous because your camera went out. I was like, uh-oh.
A little bit of pre-show excitement there.
Yeah.
So I think we're all good, though. Looks good.
Super Bowl Sunday. Hopefully we get some people hanging out for a few before the big game.
I guess we don't need to talk about who anyone's rooting for, right?
No, because we know Tampa's going to win, right?
I guess. I was talking about it with somebody earlier today. I'm like, I don't care. I just like to see a good game.
Yeah. I've lived in Tampa for a while. I actually lived just north of the stadium. So every year there was a Super Bowl or even just some big events, I would get to see the flyby because I was literally in the same flight path directly north of the stadium. So that was pretty cool.
That's cool. It is a pretty cool stadium.
Yeah. So we got a couple people. I've got over on my side, Backyard Combi. What's up, man?
Very cool. Backyard Combi was part of the premiere of the latest Haptic Garage video yesterday. So that's cool. Good to see you again, man.
Hey, good video, by the way. You're going to make me step up my editing game.
I was just replying. Well, thank you, Rob. I was just replying to good old Mike. That's who I was hanging out with earlier today.
Cool.
He says, "Hey, dudes." Hey, good old Mike.
We're going to have to get good old Mike on the show.
Yeah, that'll be cool. Barry says, "What big game?" Right on.
Barry
Neil Christensen says, "Hey, hello. Good to have you." So, hey, everybody. Thanks for coming back to join us here. For our little podcast. We're going to do another one, and we're talking about a thingy thing that is really awesome. We have a guest with us that I'll leave that to Rob to introduce, but we got a really cool guy hanging out with us to explain some of what's going on with this wild car. And we're also looking to find out your thing stories. Any kind of a thing story that you've got one, you want one, you had one. You love them, you hate them, you don't know what they are, any trivia, all of that stuff is cool. So a little bit later, we'll be catching up in the chat and share what you're sharing. So feel free to put any of that into either channel's chat, wherever you are is good. And we'll be checking in with you.
Yep. So for those that don't know, we are simulcasting from my channel to Brent's channel. So if you're watching over on his, there's going to be a different chat than what I have. So the only way to get around that really would be to do two pop-up screens so you can see both, or just pop into each one now and then, whatever. Just have fun.
It sounds like a good idea to have the multi-stream thing, but really there's a logistical reason on why we do it is because you all are too much awesome for one chat. So we had to have two channels to contain it all. That's the only way that the YouTube servers could handle it. So pick one and we'll hang out for a while.
Yeah. So last week on my channel, we premiered a new video, and it was the final video of the Thing project from Demon Motorsports, which everybody knows Demon Motorsports, and Ryan. He's the hydraulics master for suspension. And so we figured we'd talk about it a little bit today. And we've brought in Lewis, who was a big part of that video and a big part of the build. So let's bring him in.
Yeah, be ready for some fabrication madness, folks. These guys are monsters in the making stuff realm. So I'm real excited to hear. Hey, Lewis, how you doing, man?
Hi, everybody. Doing good. I hope everyone's doing well out there.
It's a nice day here. I know that.
Yeah, I just washed the car a little bit ago. It was nice to be outside, and it's either not raining, not too cold, and not 100 degrees. It was a nice medium for a change.
Yeah, we had a heck of a rainstorm come through here last night. Pretty crazy. So let's I'm looking at some pictures here. So on this VW Thing build, when I watched the analytics of the video, a lot of people were rewatching a spot of the front of this car where you had done the wheel tubs. So I figured maybe we can just show a couple pictures and maybe talk about it and a little bit how you got to where it ended up.
Yeah, let's tear into it.
Here's the I know it takes a couple seconds and a little bit of a delay when you see pictures, but that's the outside view of it.
Yep, that's looking at the passenger side inner fender well. So obviously the fender's off in there and all that stuff that's cut out of the way. So when the tire slides up in there, it's got some room. It's a little awkward to make some of those shapes in there because nothing's really a very straight edge, especially where the tire sits. So you can kind of see it's got the bow across the top. That's where the tire tucks up in there. But then the inner fender well comes in at an angle. So to make this angle and this angle all meet, it's a little bit of pushing metal around and hammering stuff and just making it fit the right way.
So I'm sure you just didn't get the saw and just start cutting a big hole and then filling it. I mean, was it a slow process? How did you get to where you probably don't want to cut any more than you have to.
Right. When I started doing in on the tubs on there, Ryan had already started on the fender raise portion in the front there. So he had some stuff cut out of the way, but it's just kind of a matter of, lower it down. What is the tire hitting? Cut that out of the way. Lower it down again. What's the tire hitting again? Cut that out of the way. And you just keep repeating that until either the whole car is all the way on the ground or whatever's hitting the ground before the tire hits, cut that out of the way. So then the tire can hit something else. So you can cut that out of the way. So you just keep slowly cutting stuff that's hitting until you get to where you want it to be.
It's a slow process.
Yeah, it takes a while. I got some hours just in the front tubs and there's the rear tubs too, and that's just the tubs, which is a small portion of that build, and there's just a lot of time just in that one small portion of that whole car.
A lot of trial and error in something like that. I guess by the time that you assemble it for the last time, that's like the millionth time.
Exactly.
Because you take a guess, you put it back together, you see, okay, let's guess again, and then you put it back together and you guess again, and that can go on for a while, can't it?
Oh yeah, you get real good at knowing what size every bolt is and stuff like that. So you can usually, at least you have all the tools with you that you need when you get back to it for that final assembly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
A lot of people don't understand when you're doing something custom like that. It's one off. You haven't done it before, so especially the first side that you're doing, you have to. Right. It takes twice as long as the second side. Once you got the first side done, second side's a breeze, really, because you already know where you're going. But you're
exactly, yeah. You can just kind of copy that over, and like you said, being something one-off, and it's not like it's a similar vehicle to anything else either. It's you tub a Mustang, you can probably tub another Mustang, or even if it's a different year, or even a different car that's similar. But tubbing the front of a Volkswagen thing is kind of different than tubbing the front of just about any other car. There's not many that have that body style and that suspension setup and that trunk layout and everything else. So it's definitely a bit different.
Yeah, they're very similar to the Bug, but they're different. When we were one of the early videos, we did the rear hydraulics on just the pan. I mean, obviously, if you don't know what it is what you're looking at, you would think it's just a Bug there. But when you see the cross member bracing across the back there, and the pans are a little bit wider, right?
Yeah, the pans on the Thing are wider than the pans on a Beetle. But the Thing pans, I believe it's Thing and Gia, are actually the same pan. And then I believe also the Fridolin, which is like that mail delivery vehicle that we didn't get here that are really cool and expensive, they also share the same pan. So I think all three of those are on the same chassis platform for the most part.
Yeah. Did it help at all that I'm sorry, Rob. Did it help at all when you were working on the tubs and the fenders that the Thing is relatively flat in some spots, or was it, well, they're still at an angle and it's still weird and it's still unique and didn't really help you out?
The front, nothing really helped out. It was all kind of weird, and you could tell the way those tubs are shaped. It's not a conventional, tub. It looks like, normally tubs, it almost looks like you could take a trailer fender and kind of box it in and make it happen. But those front ones, everything's at a really kind of strange shape and strange angles. So it was a little more tricky on the front because nothing really worked in the angle that you want it to. Whereas on the back, it was a flat platform and a flat platform, and I had to cut this out the way and make the tire fit. That was a little bit more straightforward. But the fronts were definitely a unique shape, some weird geometry going on.
I know just enough to get myself in really deep trouble. And in looking at those fenders and the work you guys did on them, I think a person that's just looking at the car as a whole would not notice that there was a ton of really skilled work that went into the fenders, because it doesn't look like anything changed. Like there's some things where if you do it right, no one knows. It seems like you nailed it there, that you had to do some crazy things to those fenders to make everything work, but they just look like the thing fenders.
Yeah, and that was all kind of the point, and especially with the fact that it's staying the patina. So not only did you have to make it look right, but then you had to kind of hide the welds and everything else that you actually did. You know, it's not just take the work that you did, then grind it all back down, cover it with a skim coat of Bondo, and paint it, and no one will ever know. All the work is out there in the open for people to see, or hopefully just to not see, because we wanted it to all kind of look and blend in, so it just looks like it's supposed to be that way.
It's really impressive. Just to clue in, there's a lively discussion going on in the Haptic Garage chat here, and there's a question coming from this. VW Restorations, he's one of our friends across the pond. He asked, do the tubs interfere with the tank on a thing? So kind of keeping in the theme of the front fenders there, did you have a problem on the other side of the fender well?
Now, as far as interfering with the gas tank, I was able to build the tubs all the way inwards right to the edge of the gas tank. Now, where we did run into issues with the fuel tank is that we did the pie cut on the pan head. So then you have the beam is sitting up higher, and we also have that rack and pinion steering on it, which is going to sit a little bit higher as well. So with all of that stuff sitting up higher in there, we did run into issues with the tank from clearance on the bottom. So I did raise the gas tank up 2 inches. But the tubs did not come in any further than to a spot that would interfere with the gas tank itself.
You can see
that's a little bit of help then.
Yeah, also that gas tank is I believe it was a Carmen Ghia gas tank that we had to use, because since the tank got raised up 2 inches, the filler neck was on the tank was then higher than the filler neck on the body, and gas doesn't like to flow up, so we had to put a standard tank in it, so you have the cap on under the hood, so you have to open the hood to fill the tank like an early Beetle or earlier Volkswagen stuff.
the paintwork you did on those tubs it's crazy. I mean, you did a little rust action on it as well and make it look a little bit patinaed, and the color matched pretty darn good.
Yeah, we happen to have a pretty convenient cabinet of random spray paints in the shop, so you just kind of walk over there and grab one that looks like it's vaguely similar and spray some of that on there, then maybe spray some black on it at the same time to make it look like it's dirty, and then you just kind of keep guessing until something looks right. So what's nice about spray paint though is you slap it on there, and if it looks too wrong, you can just wipe it off real quick with some lacquer thinner and guess again, and lather, rinse, repeat until it looks right.
Turned out pretty good.
Yeah,
so,
we were pretty impressed.
It's artistry, man. You see, nuts and bolts and welders and stock, metal stock and all kinds of things. But man, it's a creative process. Very technical, but very creative to get this to work right and look right. And hats off. Really, really cool stuff.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think I got a couple pictures of the rear. Let me see. Yeah, this is early on when it was just cut out and not even filled in yet.
Yep. Yeah, that was in that beginning phase of how high up do we need to cut. So start cutting stuff out of the way, lower it down, and does the tire still hit it? If the answer is yes, keep cutting.
Now, on that, did you have on the fender flares? Did they just get moved up, or did you have to cut the wheel well out as well?
That's the wheel well cut out as well. As you can in that picture, you can actually see that cutout is already probably about an inch and a half up from where the normal top flange would sit. So the wheel well got cut up, and then then we had the flares and everything else mount up to that, and then we have to change the shape of the fenders themselves once that new area was cut out.
That's the rear, right? Yep.
Yeah. Yep. That's the rear. That's with the tubs up in there, and then some undercoating just kind of sprayed in there to keep everything from getting all rusty again.
Yeah, we showed
I'm sorry, Rob. Just an FYI, I think there's a considerable delay on the pictures, or at least that's what I'm seeing. Maybe someone can chime in. I don't know if there's much we can do about it, but just to give you that heads up that there's looks to be a pretty good delay on the pictures.
Okay, I'll try to hold them up a little longer, just in case.
Cool pictures, though.
So, I'll bring it. The best looking thing on this thing is the pump with all the polishing and all the tube bending.
Oh yeah, that was that's definitely Ryan's artistry at its finest. There, he's got much more patience than I do, and he's a lot more skilled at the polishing and that kind of stuff for sure. Anyway, so it's definitely more his baby.
Did he let you bend any of them?
I mean, I don't know if I would say "let me" is the right term. I mean, I was more than happy to let him deal with that.
Yeah, that's pretty complicated. I mean, if you look at it, yeah, it looks nice, and and everybody. But unless you really look at it and see what had to be done to make that happen, it's crazy. Tons of work there.
Yeah, so a lot of thought ahead that you have to do on that one and try to get everything the right way. And the blocks on the pumps, they're symmetrical, but in the way that, if your pressure is on the left and your return is on the right, then when you have one facing the opposite direction, all of a sudden your pressure's on the opposite side. So you can't have symmetrical lines running out, or else they won't feed to the right port. So it was tricky to kind of make all the lines and everything go in the right direction and look like they're symmetrical, but they're not. So all the lines are actually different. Each one of those lines is a different shape, different length, different bends. But they all kind of flow the same way and blend in, so you don't really notice that each one is different. That all kind of looks symmetrical from side to side.
Do they have to be somewhat the same length to time everything? Like if you were to, raise the front or the rear, would it mess up? Like I guess I'm talking about like when you were talking about yours yesterday, and you're going to do yours so you have independent left and right. Do those lines need to be the same length so like everything would work the same speed, or is there any?
Well, on the setup that we have for the Volkswagens, it's a single cylinder in the front and then two cylinders that are tied together at the back. So you don't have really an individual corner control to worry about. So that length won't really make much of a difference. I'm not familiar enough to know that if you have, slightly different length hoses on the hydraulics, if it's going to make a difference as far as that flow restriction. I can't imagine with the minute difference that's in there that's making any real issue as far as the front lift speed versus the rear lift speed, especially since your engine and everything's in the back. So they're going to lift at a slightly different rate regardless, because you have all the weight behind you and the front end's real light. So that's going to lift a little bit faster in the front, and even down to the valving and the shocks, because we do have shocks on all four corners on that still too. So if you have really stiff or tight valve shocks, that's going to drag that suspension. So your hydraulic may lift quickly, but your spring is going to have that delay because the shocks are kind of dragging it down and doing their job.
Right. I got a question from Jonathan Jump. He says, did you build the chassis and then cut the body around the chassis? I kind of know the answer, but I'll because I've seen a lot of this going on, but I'll let you go ahead and answer that.
Well, you were there for part of that chassis build with that the video on the install. So
right.
The chassis, by and large, is still just normal Volkswagen chassis. Yeah, we raised the floors up because they hit the ground first. We pie cut the pan head where the beam mounts, so we can get the beam up higher because that would hit the ground first. But the chassis, by and large, is just kind of normal Volkswagen chassis with our hydraulics in it, with those added features to get it lower. And then the body is mounted to it still in the factory location. So it doesn't have like a body drop, so to speak. I think would be more like the mini truck style of doing it, or your traditional like body on frame kind of style, where you can actually cut out the floor area and sink that over the chassis. The way these mount to the chassis is a little bit different, so it's not really an option that way. So now the chassis was built and then the body was bolted onto it as it would normally be, and then it's just a matter of cut everything out of the way until it can sit on the ground with the body on it, and whatever's hitting, just keep hacking away at it until you have the space and it touches the ground.
Yeah. And another thing, there's a pun.
Things are ripe for puns.
I know. The side, the rockers, or what you would call the rocker there, a lot of people lower these and they extend that down so it looks like it's sitting lower to the ground. In this one, that did not happen. It's literally sitting on the pans, and what you see above the ground on the side is actually just, it is what it is. It can't go any lower than that.
Correct. Yeah, the pans where the body bolts down the side, those the Volkswagen floor pans, they have a flange in them. It's about maybe an inch and a quarter tall, and that's a boxed area. That's where the body bolts down. So that's a raised area, so it's got the strength in it, and then all down that seam is where the body bolts to it. So that space that you're seeing under there, that's actually still that floor pan. So the floor pan is sitting flat on the ground, and then you have that little space between the floor and where the body actually starts. The difference there is, like on a Beetle, they typically have the running boards between the fenders, and that running board bolts into that space. Now, they do make running boards for a Thing, so if he ever picked up a set of Thing running boards, they would bolt into that slot, and the bottom of the running board would literally sit flat across the ground. And, you know, I may have suggested that he pick up a set when he finds one, just because I think that would look pretty cool to have those just absolutely just sitting flat on the ground from front to back.
I may or may not have heard that he is actually scraping the bolts off the bottom of the engine. So it's and the engine's raised how much?
I think it was about an inch and a quarter is what we were able to do with the engine raise. Yeah. We didn't really kind of measure anything. We just kind of cut it and raised it until it wasn't sitting on the ground anymore, and then made the rear engine bracket from there.
And here, I got one more question on my side here. Alex Havera is, what is the ride like? Comfort speaking. And this is the biggest, every time Ryan sees a post on hydraulics and the way they ride, everybody thinks they ride like crap. And this thing absolutely does not ride like crap. It actually rides just as good, if not better, than a stock setup. And you can explain to him why that is, because it's actually great. It's a great ride.
Exactly. That's the whole design behind the kit is, forget everything you know about hydraulics in cars and lowrider suspension and all that stuff, because it doesn't really apply at all to the way that this is set up. Now, traditional lowrider, you have a bunch of batteries, you have real stiff springs, you have all kinds of other stuff. None of that is involved in this setup with the hydraulics. So this is still running your normal 12-volt, same starting battery. And then what the hydraulics are doing is they're only turning the factory springs, factory torsion bars. So the point in the middle on your torsion bar where it's normally fixed, that is what is rotating, and what's rotating that is the hydraulic. So the hydraulic cylinder is going to move, that's going to locate where your torsion bar sits, but then your ride is still riding on those factory torsion bars. So your spring rate stays the same at any height you set it at. You can run that, run the hydraulic cylinder all the way out and you have it at full lift. You're still riding on the stock torsion bar at its normal spring rate. You bring it up and you're, a quarter inch off the ground, you're still riding on that stock spring rate. So no matter where you have it, it's only turning the stock torsion bars, so your ride stays like stock at all the heights, which is really nice.
It's kind of like if you're the pitcher, and most people know about the weld-in adjusters that you can put in. If you put those in, and if you're not bottoming it on your shocks or the bump stops, it'll ride pretty good. So as long as you got all that clearance, with those, it's a similar ride is what I'm saying.
Exactly.
That's a super cool design idea there, is to take a look at the design as it is and try and make that do what you want instead of redesigning the whole thing, right? So the integral part of the VW ride is what you maintain there, but you still got that goal that you set from the beginning to lower it all the way to the ground.
And be able to pick it back up and drive away.
That's right. Yeah, totally cool. We see that in your shop. It comes through every time that we get to see your shop. You and Ryan both, like when he was starting the Winnie project, and if someone hasn't checked that out, you need to check that out too. This vintage Winnebago, super cool. But from the beginning, Ryan was articulating an insane idea. But it was whatever it takes. We'll cut up the chassis, we'll move the engine, we'll find a place to drive it later on, whatever. But whatever it takes, we're going to get this thing to meet the one goal of slamming it to the ground. And I think that makes you better at what you do. right? If you got your teeth in that, right, you've got to figure it out at that point, and it's probably made y'all even better at what you do in that shop.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't hurt.
I have a question here that I want to get in if I can. VW Restorations asked another good one. He's wondering, did you narrow the front beam to decrease the track from the fender's edge? And if you did, how much?
I believe that the beam that's in it is, I believe, a stock width Beetle beam, which, if my memory is correct, is already 2 inches narrower than a stock thing beam. So it's either a stock width Type 1 bug beam, or it's possibly a 2-inch narrowed Type 1 bug beam. I don't remember which one that one is because we had 2 kits going on at the same time at that time. I believe that on Justin's, though, it is a stock width Beetle beam, so it's just got that narrowness over the thing right out of the gate, but it's not much narrower than that. And I don't think we could have got away with much narrower than where it's sitting, because with the 16s on it, and there's just not a lot of room inboard from there.
Cool, cool. Thanks for the answer.
Absolutely.
I missed the answer. I was reading text.
I know Rob's answering questions in the chat, and I'm like reading those as I'm answering. I'm like, all right, no, we're focus.
It's whatever a Beetle beam is.
Exactly.
Yeah, Alex was asking again about the what raises and lowered. And of course, it's a RAM. There's a video from when we did this first, the first, I don't know if it's the first thing video, but it was an early on video of the thing, and it's actually how to install the rear setup. And it goes through, and you get a pretty good idea how it actually turns the rear. I don't know if we've done a front version of that. We probably should.
Even in the thing video, you got that clip, I believe, where Ryan's taking that cover off of the hydraulics underneath in the back. That's a pretty good shot of where those cylinders are, and that's all welded right in line with the torsion housing. So basically, the rear torsion housing where those splines are normally fixed in the housing, that gets cut out, and our kit gets welded into that section. So that has new torsion splines that your springs go into, and as the hydraulic cylinder extends, it's actually rotating that spline section in the torsion housing to raise and lower the rear.
Right. Yeah. So Alex is also saying that if we cut the stock torsion springs in the front, will it make them a little stiffer? And the answer is yes, a little bit, but
if you go drastically, yeah, the narrower you go, the stiffer the spring is going to get. But that is a stock width Beetle beam with stock Beetle torsion springs in it. So on the thing specifically, it still has stock spring rate in the front because of the stock width still. But yeah, if you narrowed that beam 6 inches over stock, that's going to be a notably stiffer torsion spring versus one that's going to be 6 inches longer, because all of a sudden that spring doesn't have as much room to twist.
Yeah, but it still rides incredibly well.
Oh yeah,
it doesn't feel like a lowered car.
No, not compared to a lot of the different Volkswagens that I've built in the past, where they're just hitting everything and not a lot of travel because everything is just not done quite to the same extent that we have them on the kit.
Yeah, my first Volkswagen, I just pulled the springs out. Yep, rode great.
Exactly.
Dan Nilsson is asking if you could use pneumatics instead of hydraulics. And I think I know the answer to that one, but I think there's a really cool reasoning behind the answer you're about to give. So could you use pneumatics like air instead of hydraulics?
Yeah, I mean, people are doing a ton of air ride on Volkswagens. I mean, you see that pretty frequently. Now, the question whether can you just use air instead of hydraulics in place of how we have our design, that you would not want to do. So like in the terms of if you have a pneumatic cylinder or a bag trying to rotate the stock torsion bars, you wouldn't want to do that, because now effectively you have 2 different springs and 2 different spring rates both trying to serve the same function. So you're going to have springs fighting each other back and forth. But if you were to do like a bag setup and eliminate the torsion springs, that way your air is your actual spring. So like, again, back to like mini truck stuff where you're having an airbag as your air spring. That is a fairly commonplace thing to do. But the biggest downfalls on the air ride is, whereas the hydraulics, you hit that switch, you have instant response, air you're waiting for a tank to fill. tend to have a little bit more leak issues on the air side of things. Ours, we don't have really issues on the hydraulics with the leaks, or you can set it up overnight and come out in the driveway and your car's still going to be all the way up in the air. And then what I think is the biggest bonus here is with air, the lower you want to ride, the lower pressure you have to have in the bag. So the softer your spring rate's going to be, the more likely you're going to be to hit a bump and smash into the ground. Whereas on our setup, you know, as soon as you raise it off the ground a 1/4 inch, you're back to a factory spring rate. So you're going to have the same consistent ride at any height you choose, versus on air, you know, if you ride it real low, it's real soft. If you ride it real high, it's real firm. And you don't really get to choose anything other than that.
Dan gets it. He responded, hydraulics are not compressible.
Exactly.
Air is another squishy thing, right? What makes hydraulic fluid is it doesn't squish. So yeah, you know, Lewis, I love how understated you are about all this. So you're giving these awesome technical explanations for what y'all are doing, but it's all very matter of fact. The gorilla in the room is that y'all have found the way to do this. Right? That's the thing about the air ride, is it's its own ride, and it's not the stock ride. It's, you know, arguably not as good of a ride. I think someone could support that argument, but y'all are retaining the stock suspension essentially in terms of the feel, and still getting these wild results out of it in terms of ride height and the tricks that these vehicles can do. That's pretty special. Like, I haven't seen that anywhere else. Maybe it's out there, but that's a pretty cool thing that y'all are doing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The word's going to get out.
Big credit to Ryan. I mean, he's the one that designed all this and figured out how to make all that happen. And you know, so his bus has the original, we'll call it prototype, because it was originally just designed to be for his bus. But then he decided, you know what, maybe we could do something with this. But yeah, it's come through a lot of changes over the years as far as different improvements and stuff to make. But yeah, he's got the wizard brain behind all this to get it figured out and working as well as it does.
Yeah, he's the mad scientist that never stops smiling.
Exactly.
I swear we're going to get some lab coats. I keep getting comments on the mad scientist and then lab coats, and so we're going to get him a lab coat for the next video.
So it's great, because we've been trying to find one of the old ignition scope machines, or it's got like, you know, the digital readout, and then it's got the arm that comes off of it that's got like your amp clamps and everything else, like the old like 80s engine diagnostic machines. We want to get one for the shop just because they look ridiculous. And
I saw one.
You use it, you have to have lab coats on.
I seriously just saw one for sale not long ago, and I'm like, who would ever want that?
I saw one. Same thing as Rob. It was an auction. I would like to have one of the Sun distributor testers. That would be super cool. I actually have a use for that.
Right.
But yeah, I've got the old Craftsman engine analyzer. That's as close as I can get to what you're talking about.
Yeah, I got one of those too. But man, something about having that old screen with, like, you know, the green pixelated font on it.
Monochrome.
Exactly. You got to have, you know, the ignition spikes and all those readouts and everything else, and just confuse people because nobody knows what the heck that is anymore. So it would be fun to use it.
Hang your lab coat on it.
A lab coat and big goggles.
Yeah. I think the technicians actually wore that stuff back then when they used it.
I've seen the safety video.
Yeah. From 1953, I think. They gave it to us in school in the 80s and 90s, the same videos.
So this system that you and Ryan work on, it's obviously in a bus. That was the first one you said. Now we see it in a thing, and I'm pretty sure you have it for Beetle as well. Is this something that only y'all do, or is there like a kit form of it that is available to people, or how can someone get their hands on this if they really, really, really wanted it?
Yeah, so as far as I'm aware, we're the only ones doing anything like it. I haven't seen anybody else with a kit that does the same setup where we're rotating the factory torsion bars with the beam, with the Weldon torsion rear housing, all that setup. And that is a kit that we manufacture. So we have it for split bus. We have it for all Type 1 based Volkswagen. So that's going to cover your Carmen Diaz. It's going to cover your things. It's going to cover the Beetle. Anything that runs that standard chassis, this will fit on. We have done we've done one bay window install in-house, and we are in the process of building a bay window kit to send out to, I believe, California. So we do can accommodate for a bay window. There's just a couple more things involved, especially if you have a later bay window, because the bolt pattern on the beam or on the chassis where the beam bolts in, that changed in the end of '69. So we can make different side plates. You have ball joint ball joint would be bay window stuff, but you can put a kingpin beam in it. There's just lots of different variables. But as far as the standard kit is concerned, any Type 1 base stuff we have available, and then also split bus stuff we have available.
I didn't know you were working on
a serious venture for sure, right? It's not for the faint of heart, but it's good to know that it's accessible for those that really want something like that.
Yeah, the Type 1 base kit is, I mean, I'd say your average backyard fabricator can handle that without any problems. I mean, we make it pretty straightforward. It comes with templates. I mean, if you ordered that and you have the body off your car, you have your bare chassis sitting there, it doesn't take a lot to be able to install that kit from there either. So it's you really don't even need a tape measure. We got all the templates and everything laid out. You can just slap everything on, cut it out, drop the pieces in, weld them in, and you're ready to rock.
Yeah, we showed that on that video for the rear. It's really easy. That's when we did that video of the rear, I had not done it before.
Exactly. Yeah, it's intimidating to look at when you don't know, but once you tear into it, it's really pretty straightforward.
We have somebody with us that would have a unique interest in something like this. Dan had a family of 7 that did some traveling in a Beetle, apparently.
Wow.
Well, here's another example where it was 9 people. You said that something like this might have improved the ride height. You might have had to build it the other way, though, to raise the vehicle instead of lower the vehicle. But it sounds plausible.
Yeah, anything's possible at that point. I don't think we've ever made one to make it go higher, but, you know, I know a guy.
Well, if you have to come up with a company name, I'm pretty sure it's Demon Motorsports. But if you had to come up with one, you could say it's Clown Car Squishies. It'll keep your clown car off the ground.
Exactly.
Right. So Alex has a question. He said, "What website can I see this sorcery?"
Good word.
It is sorcery at its finest. It is on Facebook is probably the best spot to see any of the products and items available there. Facebook, it's Demon Motorsports is the page. He's got it up on the screen now. Yeah, we don't have a specific website as far as ordering through. So if you were interested in the kit, wanted to place an order for a kit, questions on pricing, anything like that, you can go to the Demon Motorsports Facebook page and you can message through there. It's typically Ryan that's going to get those messages and be answering anything that you have to go, any questions you have or pricing, all that stuff. He's more than happy to answer those questions, and that would be the way to go as far as if you're interested in getting the kit. That's the place to find us.
Yeah, the pricing's the tricky one because every single kit's a little bit different, and it just kind of
exactly. There's the base prices for the kits, but I don't think we've ever done 2 of the same. And the price is the kit itself. If you want us to install it, that's obviously its own deal. And anybody who's ever worked on an old car before knows that you're one broken bolt away from a 10-minute job becoming a 3-hour job, becoming a 3-week job, and that never happens.
What would you say the ratio is of people that have you install them versus trying to go it on their own? VW Restorations is in England, so it would be tougher for him to have you all install it, right?
Correct.
And he says that he'd be happy to test one of these kits if you need it. But so what's the ratio of people that do it on their own versus have you all do it? I think I'd have to have you all do it.
I would say probably 80-20. I think most of our kits we've installed for sure. But we have done quite a few as far as just shipping the kit out. There's been a couple to California. There's one in Alabama. I know there's a thing in Colorado right now that's we built that thing kit to ship out at the same time that we were building Justin's thing kit. So we were just basically building 2 of the same. And so one of them got shipped out, and he's in the process of installing, and we installed Justin's. We have made one for a barn door bus over in the UK and shipped that one out to him. A little bit of a trick with customs because you can't really ship the shocks as easily because it's a compressed liquid, so that's kind of a hard deal to get through, and there's all kinds of little stipulations you have to kind of run through to get it out there. But yeah, no, we can ship it out. We've already shipped one over there, so if he's interested, we can.
Y'all are the poster children of where there's a will, there's a way. all the hoops to jump through to pull that off, but it's pretty cool that you do it.
I think if you're doing the Volkswagen Beetle thing, those are, as far as installing them yourself, I think if you've got average fabrication skills, nothing fancy, I think it'd be fairly easy to do. When you get into the bus, and especially the bay, as far as I remember,
Oh yeah,
it gets a bit more.
A bit of a nightmare.
Yeah.
The Beetle stuff is definitely, average backyard, any Type 1 kit. I would say have no fear. You can totally install that one if you have some basic welding and fabrication skills and know your way around your Volkswagen. That one's not a big deal. Bus is a little bit more difficult just because you can't just have a bare chassis to install your hydraulics in. You have a whole bus that you're working on still. So if you're doing it on jack stands and stuff like that, it's just a little bit more to try to tear into and can be difficult. But certainly still doable. I mean, the front is largely bolt in. You have to cut a couple things, and again, all the variables of, do you want the rack and pinion steering, which the answer should always be yes, because it's probably one of the best upgrades that you can do, because it makes an amazing difference in how it drives. But that's a whole nother set of fabrication that has to go into the bus to convert it to rack and pinion, versus slapping a beam in with the steering box and everything else still in there. And what you can do is just fine. We've actually done a bus like that at the shop that came out really nice. That was I don't remember the name. It was the blue bus where you have that video of just kind of rolling around. And I mean, it didn't get tubs. It didn't get a ton of different stuff cut out of it. It just got the hydraulics installed, and it still lays out real low, and it looks amazing.
That was a good looking bus. I don't wish I had a picture of it right now. And they drive so good with that steering. It's amazing.
The rack and pinion makes a world of difference. I remember
I wouldn't do
it. Ryan's bus. I was like, "What is this madness?" You could be sitting still and turn the wheel and not have to flex on it to get it to go anywhere. It steers, and then when you're going down the road, it doesn't have the typical 90 degrees of play that you're trying to fight anytime the wind blows slightly. It's great.
And it's actually a true rack and pinion. I know there's a kit out there that kind of still uses the some of the other parts in the steering linkage, and it's
the other kit, basically all it does is replace the steering box. So instead of putting a steering box on your frame, you have this half of a rack and pinion essentially on the frame, and then it's still trying to spin the swing lever, which is then still connected to a swing pin, which is still connected to the factory tie rod. So there's still all that margin of error and all that slop. Versus this is actually a rack and pinion where the tie rods are center loaded to the rack, so you have nice long tie rods, so you don't have the bump steer issues. You don't have a lot of toe change through all that travel that you have with the kit now, because when you're raising it up, if your tie rods are real short, obviously your toe is going to get pulled in as your tires move up and down. So by having that center load rack, you keep the nice long tie rods. You don't get all the toe change, you don't get all the bump steer, and it just steers so great.
There's another question from Dan. He's wondering if there's a particular rack and pinion that you prefer. Maybe there's a different one for the bus versus some other options.
The racks that we use, they're typically late 80s GM front-wheel drive racks. I don't remember exactly what they're out of, but it's a center load rack and pinion. Though Ryan put one in his bus originally, and it was just a rack that he found in a junkyard, but it was a manual steer. And the manual steer is great because you don't really have to do any modification to the rack itself to make it work. You can just kind of use it. And unfortunately, they don't remanufacture the manual steering racks. So we have to buy the reman racks that are power, and then we depower them. So we take them all apart and have to shorten the valve body and all kinds of other stuff on it to make them happen. But that's the one that fits. That's the one that works, and that's the way to go.
Is anybody else noticing that Lewis is not going, "Oh yeah, we got that on Amazon"? This is all like hot rodder stuff. It came out of something and has been repurposed for this. That's pretty cool. As close as I've gotten to that kind of action is having a vintage motorhome. There's actually a little bit of hot rodding vocation going into maintaining one of those things too, but you guys are off the map.
Yeah, and I know Ryan found one of those manual racks recently, and he was pretty excited because he didn't have to do all that.
If you can get your hands on one, they're worth getting your hands on, just because it saves a bunch of work, and it's hard to kill a manual power steering rack. There's not a lot of problems that they can get, which I assume is why they don't remanufacture them, because it's typically not a part that goes bad.
Right.
That's somewhat of a counterintuitive name too. a manual power steering rack.
Well, I guess it would be considered a manual rack and pinion if I were to.
No, I hear you though. I get what you mean. It's like when you have to plug in your wireless router.
Exactly.
There's an interesting comment on your channel there. It's Volkswagen 87 sprint car steering rack. I think it would probably be too short of a ratio.
Correct. Yeah. Because they sell even like dune buggy steering racks and stuff like that for the off-road crowd. But a lot of those are, I mean, some of them are even 1-to-1 steering, and you don't want that in the bus going down the road. That would be a little twitchy, a little bit frightening to drive, and I don't know if you're ever going to get used to that. This keeps a really, really similar ratio to what the factory steering box was in the bus. I mean, if you daily drive a vintage Volkswagen with the steering box, you might notice a difference as far as the ratio, but I mean, if you were to hop in, a bus with our rack and pinion kit in it, and you haven't driven a bus on a super regular basis, you wouldn't know that that's not that ratio that it's supposed to be. It turns so nice and easy. It's really a wonderful upgrade for them.
It's like 2 1/4 turns, isn't it? Am I remembering that, or
I believe it's something like that, which I think is a little bit more than what the factory steering ratio was. So I think you're turning a little bit more lock to lock with the rack and pinion versus the steering box. But I'll take the ease and effort over the quickness anytime anyway.
Yeah. Alex was asking about the price of the kits, and it's so hard. Like I said, it's so hard to give a price on that. Just get with Ryan. You can contact him through that Facebook page and kind of give you a ballpark where they start,
Right. I believe there's actually a post up on the page that has some of the base pricing on it. I mean, going on memory, I believe the base kit for like Type 1 stuff is you're going to be about, I think it was about 4,000 for the Type 1 and about 5,000 for the Type 2. And again, that's as a standard kit. The rack and pinion's additional. There's different variables. There's a lot of different things that we could talk about as far as upgrades for that kit are available. But yeah, if you check out the Facebook page, I believe there is a pinned post up there that has a picture with some of that information on it and some of that pricing.
Maybe he'll let me give one away. What do you think? Think he'll do it?
Yeah, I don't know. You'll have to talk to him more on that one because, I don't have a Volkswagen with hydraulics yet.
Well, he'll let me give one away if I buy it. Maybe. We'll see. Maybe
I'm sure the pricing is fair for everything that goes into it and all the R&D and the man hours to put these things together. It doesn't strike me as the place for a bargain hunter.
Yeah, it's the business side of me says that I probably need to go in and look at what our man hours are, what our cost of materials are, and kind of reanalyze our pricing. Because to be honest, I think on a lot of these kits that we're not installing, there's very little profit margin, if any, at that point, because there's just so many man hours that go into manufacturing each one of these kits, and steel keeps going up, and everything else is going up too with it, and that pricing hasn't changed since we debuted the kit years ago at Bug Jam. So, like I said, the business side of me says, well, maybe we need to analyze this and make sure we're making the money in the right spot. But then the lazy side of me says, let's just keep installing them.
Well, I hope that you'll always be able to charge enough to keep it sustainable. Right? If you look around someday and you're not making enough to feed yourself, but you're doing all this awesome work for people, then all of us have lost something, right?
Yeah, no, I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think it hasn't been a problem so far, and I think we'll be able to keep pumping them out. And the people who have them, they'll vouch worth every penny that you'll spend on it.
I think it'll spread like wildfire. It'll just hit some point, and people will really start catching on to a pretty cool option.
Yeah, it's catching on big already, man. I'm really excited to see from where we were when we debuted at Bug Jam to where we're at now. I mean, since we've done the debut, we haven't had less than 2 or 3 in process at any given time.
Wow.
We have 3 buses at the shop right now. We have 2 different Beetles. I mean, there's several kits getting shipped out. So, I mean, there's, I believe, at least 5, 6, 7 in process right now.
So
That's
if I do
exciting. That's pretty cool.
if I give one away, I better get my order in now.
Yeah, better get on that waiting list.
I was thinking we can give one away for 10,000 subs. It might have to be 20,000 time I get it.
Dan says he had an 88 Civic, and he thinks, if he recalls correctly, that the manual rack in it was 2.5 to 1, which isn't far off from the 2 1/4 to 1 that you were talking about.
Yeah, the ratio is all right in there. So it's, like I said, it doesn't feel like it's any different than your average car as far as steering is concerned. Obviously, the biggest difference there is on an 88 Civic. That's not a center load rack and pinion. That's kind of your standard rack where your tie rods, your inner tie rod is having the boots on the outside. And the main reason, like I said before, that we don't use a rack based on that design is because by the time you have your rack and pinion ends and your tie rod starts and your spindle's right there next to it, you end up with a really short tie rod versus having a tie rod that center loads into the rack and pinion. You keep a nice long tie rod to avoid all those bump steer and toe change issues.
I'm just going to keep nodding my head like I knew exactly what you were talking about.
Well,
But that's awesome.
If you keep following the Winnebago project, you're going to learn a little bit about that stuff when we get to the steering, because it's going to be nuts.
Yeah, that one's going to be interesting. Definitely some engineering involved in there. Lots of cardboard assisted design and such.
Yep.
So, Lewis, do you mind if I don't want to change the subject, but do you mind if we ask a little bit about you, like what your background is in context of the work you do at the shop, and what awesome things happened in your backstory to get you here, to where you're making these for these cars?
So I guess I met Ryan through Volkswagen stuff. I mean, I've been into Volkswagens as far back as I can remember. Bought my first one when I was 13. And then, so I met Ryan through Volkswagens. I saw the bus and realized how ridiculous all the fabrication work and everything was in that. Then when the hydraulic idea became hey, instead of this being just for mine, what if we start producing these and installing them and selling them as a kit? When that idea came about, my friend Aaron had a Carmen Ghia, and he was gonna basically, that Ghia was kind of the test mule for the original Type 1 base setup. So he started going up to Ryan's shop as far as getting a lot of that stuff installed and figured out. And he had asked me, hey, you want to come up and help out at the shop and see if we can get this thing going in the right direction? So I went up with him, and I remember my first day up there and seeing all the different stuff that Ryan does. I was like, holy crap, I need to figure out a way that I need to be working here. Because at the time I was working at Firestone. I was there for about 10 years, either as a lead technician or a service manager running the showroom, running the back shop. So I was going up there, helping them out, get the Ghia all set. And then on my days off from Firestone, I would go up to the shop and help Ryan out with whatever he had going on at the time. And basically any downtime that I could afford to go up there and spend up there, I was going up there and spending up there. Then I took a bit of a hiatus. I built a 84 Vanagon, put a Subaru engine in it, lifted it up a little bit, and traveled the country for 6 months in that, living out of the van. Then when I came back, I was like trying to figure out which direction I wanted to go. Do I go back into kind of normal job work stuff, or I'd been talking to Ryan about, hey, do you have a position available, or if I were to come back in, can I get my way back into the shop and do this as a full-time instead of just coming in on whatever days I happen to not be working at my other job. And at the time, he happened to have a couple cars that were, backing up. So he's like, yeah, come on up. Let's get these other cars banged out. And that was probably November of 2019. So I've been there full-time since, which is really great. And then I was living in Port Richey, traveling back and forth from Crystal River on a regular basis, which got to be a bit much. I was about 100 miles a day. And then when I realized that, yeah, this is the shop, this is the spot, this is the dream job, and this is where I'm going to be forever. And eventually Demon Motorsports is going to be mine once Ryan's too old and crippled to work on stuff. I was like, all right, time to buy a house up this way. So I bought a house right around the corner from the shop. I'm 8 minutes away now, and life's good,
That's awesome. You confronted a point where you recognized opportunity, which can be really scary. when you said you were at Firestone for 10 years, you had something going. They probably loved you there, and everything was copacetic. And then there's this, and you jumped. So good on you for that.
Appreciate it. Yeah, it was a lot of it was just setting things up the right way. I had kind of a base plan for a long time, which was live cheap, save a bunch of money, buy a cheap house, buy it outright, and not have the debt and everything else hanging over my head to worry about. And I was fortunate enough where I was able to kind of follow through with that. So I busted for Firestone for 10 years, and then was working for Firestone and Demon Motorsports for probably the better part of 3 years or so, doing both jobs and just kind of stashing money aside. And then, like I said, took my hiatus for a little bit, came back, and then once I was back, it was time to make the dream happen the right way. So I was able to bought the house outright. So that's a lot of stress off to make that decision of working for more of a private facility, doing fabrication and that kind of stuff versus your more secure corporate job. But when the bills are minimal, it's easier to make riskier decisions.
Being debt free has a freeing effect for sure. It gives you a lot more options. But that's awesome. I was talking with one of our friends, good old Mike, who I think is with us today here. I was talking with him earlier today on his podcast, and this idea came up. Was you got to find that thing that really sparks your interest. We were talking about pulling all-nighters and being up until 5 a.m. to get it done, and you don't do that for your laundry. Laundry's great. It's important, and you got to make time for it. But you're not going to stay up through the night to pull that off, or move to a different area so that you can be better. You're not going to wake up in the middle of the night and say, how can I do my laundry better? It's the stuff like this that you get really into, that you just answer the call, in a sense. It takes courage, but it's pretty cool to see someone do it.
I'm going to say that I've never done an all-nighter doing laundry. Gonna put that out there.
I think that's safe.
So, Lewis, maybe we're going way longer than I thought we would. Hope it's interesting to everybody out there sticking around. Do you want to see what Lewis is working on now? His project it's some other crazy sorcery, but
let's see it.
Can you see it yet?
It'll get here. It's like a VW. Just give it time.
Yeah.
Totally sweet.
Yep, that's the latest project. So it's a '68 Ford Falcon. In the picture there, it's still just on some cut springs and stuff like that. But as the next picture comes up with whatever lag we're dealing with, you can kind of see the direction it's taken. So it's going to go a little bit more of the traditional lowrider style. So 8-inch front cylinders, 12-inch rear cylinders, coilover setup all the way around, modifying the control arms, and it's a unibody car, so there'll be a lot of stitch welding of the chassis and all kinds of other bracing involved to make sure the car doesn't fold in half the first time I try to bang a corner on 3. But it'll be worth it. It's something I haven't built yet. Yeah, I've always loved traditional lowriders. I had an El Camino that I bought from a friend of mine that was on a 2-pump 8 battery setup, and hands down the most fun car I've ever owned. So, but it felt wrong driving it because I didn't build it. I'm one of those guys where if I didn't build the car, I feel like I'm not driving my car. So I figured it was time to build my own, and that's where we're at right now, is getting that Falcon all juiced up and ready to hit the streets.
Totally cool.
I don't know how slow or fast these pictures are going, or if you're even seeing them, but if you see that coil at the end, I think it's off of a Mack truck or something similar. I'm not sure.
Coil spring.
I can't wait.
Did that one originally have a inline 6 in it?
Yep, still does. It's a 206 cylinder. I've never been the go fast racing guy. I've always been the slam it to the ground and do stuff with weird cars that people typically don't like guy. And I'm more than happy with keeping that straight 6 and the 3-speed auto in there. And I'll do 62 miles an hour everywhere, but I'll be hitting switches and looking cool on the way.
That's awesome. That's actually an engine, a type of engine that I've yet to get to play with. maybe a mid 50s, early 50s Chevy stove bolt is going to be my thing, but they sound like they run really smooth, that they're a robust design. They're not the torquiest thing, but they're a robust design that you can maintain and keep alive and get real smooth power out of it.
Exactly. That's kind of the plan. Is I just want something that's easy. I want to be able to get in, turn the key, fire it up, drive around. I'll probably end up going fuel injection on it. I'll end up doing the Holly Sniper kit. They make one that basically bolts onto that setup, just because carburetors are annoying and the technology's there for a reason. So take advantage of it.
Well, we've hit the hour mark. We're gonna stick around. What do you want to do there, guys? What do you think?
I'm down for whatever, man.
I'll catch up in the chat for a little bit here. But we should probably go ahead and start winding it down. Any last minute questions for Lewis, get them in. We've got an expert here that can probably give you some pretty cool insights on how to do amazing things with your car. Who wouldn't want to do that? Dan was talking about that Civic earlier, 770,000 miles. And then a mule deer took it out.
Oh, man.
Which that stinks. VW Coco, another one of our friends in the England area, says he was an engineer for 28 years, but now he's a full-time VW shop. He's got 36 Volkswagens at the moment in his Horde collection, he says. So there's your kindred spirit there, Lewis. Somebody out there living their dream as well.
That's doing it right.
I'm sorry?
So that's doing it right, man. It's it's more about the happiness, less about the dollars.
There you go. You do what you really, really want, and the dollars will come, or so I've been told. Good old Mike says, thanks for the shout out. No problem, buddy. It was fun hanging out with you earlier today. Just a shameless plug here. He'll post the podcast that we recorded this morning in 2 weeks. So on February 19th, if I got the date right. So everybody definitely check out good old Mike's channel for that. Dan Nielsen says that the engine that we were talking about, the 200 inline six, was the basis for the Australian Barra. If that rings a bell.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it. The Australians seem to be a big fan of the Falcon. It's still made over there, I believe. They got it for a lot longer than we did, and I believe it's the Barra. I don't know how that is. Barra or Barra. It's basically the Australian 2JZ. So it's big old nasty straight six turbo, lots of power, known to hold lots of power on the stock bottom end and do really good burnouts.
I bet it's an impressive looking crank. It's long and huge. Dan is asking if we had any pictures of the thing. Rob was putting some up earlier. We may have had a delay issue still. I think some people saw them, maybe some people didn't, but maybe one last cool picture of the thing would work, Rob, and that'd be cool.
Let me see. I've got. I don't have any of the whole car for some reason because I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about the thing.
Yeah, just whatever you have. And in the meantime, well, first, there's the video on Rob's channel that was posted last weekend, so you could see all about it. By checking that out after the end of the stream here. And also, I just want to thank everybody for being a part of this. It's so cool to have people be interested in the same things that this little circle of friends is. So thanks for being a part of it and interacting in the chat and always being so great to the channel. I really do appreciate that. And also on behalf of Rob, I want to thank Lewis for being a part of this too. You took an hour out of your Sunday to do something that you're probably not terribly used to doing, just to share a little bit of your story with us. So on behalf of Rob and everybody else, thanks, Lewis, for coming in today.
I appreciate y'all having me. It was a good time, and I'm either talking cars not on the internet, or I'm talking cars on the internet. So either way, I'm good with it.
Well, maybe we'll have you back next week. So
be in the loop, man. It was fun.
All right. We'll let you go, and we'll sign off here shortly. Well, thanks for coming along, Lewis.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again, Lewis. Take care, buddy.
He's a great guy.
That's awesome. Him and Ryan both are. Well, I just got to meet Lewis today, but they both seem like a lot of fun. I bet they have a great time working in the shop, but still know how to focus and put their head down and get it done.
Oh man, you should. Well, we could have a whole nother channel of behind the scenes going on because it gets a little nutty. But we might. I don't know if it would pass any of the FCC laws that we might have to air after 10 at night.
Well, sometimes we turn the camera on for what we're doing, and then sometimes we don't, because sometimes it's just the experience.
Yeah. It's always fun over there, and if you don't have thick skin, you might not want to come around.
I bet a lot of shops could be described that way. It's all good. I worked in a motorcycle shop for a little while, and there was some of that. There's personalities and conflict and a lot of good times too.
Yeah. Everybody, I don't want to get into it, how sensitive everybody is nowadays, but
all right, time to close out.
Just quit being so sensitive.
Good old Mike says, "Thank you, Lewis." Oh, you bet. Thanks, Lewis, on everyone's behalf. Very, very cool topic today. So it was neat to see a little bit about that thing, and maybe we'll get to do something in the future.
On good old Mike, I mean, I checked out his channel the other day, and he's a bit of a musician.
He is. Yeah, he's got an album out that he released recently that I think is a charitable venture. A little something to check out as well.
Yeah, I'm a bass player, so we might have to get together and jam somehow. I don't know where he lives, but we can maybe do some sort of digital jam, one of them Zoom things that everybody does, and put a song together.
There you go. Yeah, there were a lot of great channels represented today. We mentioned VW Restorations, VW Nut 1967, or Brian was with us. Good old Mike, of course, and the one, the only VW Jawbreaker has been with us as well. So good to see everybody. Definitely check these channels out if you haven't, but I'm imagining you have.
And if any of you guys want to come on, even just any of the guests or the viewers who don't have a channel, if you want to come hang out one of these days, you can. I'm looking for the email. Well, there's an email that you could send your info to, and I'll contact you and we'll set you up. So yeah, get with us. Send me a private message.
It's at Gmail, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting this here, but
no worries.
Here you go. So yeah, VWFabworks@gmail.com if you want to be on. It'd be fun. I think it'd be fun just to have a regular guy on there,
I'm a regular guy.
As well as other YouTubers. Yeah.
A normie. All right, cool. Thanks everybody once again, and we'll see you again in the future in some capacity talking about something, and I bet it's going to be awesome.
All right, thanks everybody. We'll see you next time.
Goodbye now.